Shadowland. They've got fire, they've got style, they make chaos look worthwhile. Partners in crime, heartbeats aligned, together they're one of a kind. They're the couple that slays together, storming the world, it's now or never. Back to back, through thick and thin, in the game of life they always win. Blazing trails, leaving legends behind. Love so fierce, it's one of a kind. We're the couple that slays together. Oh.
Hi, and welcome to The Couple That Slays Together. I'm Katie.
Hey, and I'm Brandon. Well, gosh, you guys, this is our third episode. Really exciting. At the time of recording this, we had just put out our intro episode yesterday, and gosh, the responses we've gotten have been so nice. Everybody's been so kind. I don't know about you, but I've gotten some messages, just congratulating us on starting, and we put a lot of work into this, a lot of into building everything that you see on camera. Just our set here, getting all the pieces put together, and it really just seeing the love from you guys has really paid off and made us feel good. So just wanted to say thank you all. Katie, how has the response been for you?
I am actually really shocked at just the sheer number. We have a lot of friends. You've made a lot of acquaintances through conventions and traveling and everything. So I knew that, just of our inner circle would be a few people.
Yep.
But that seems like a lot of other people have tuned in, and a lot of the feedback I have is, I'm not really the biggest fan of horror, but I love you guys and I want to check it out. And then you did so well.
Yep.
So that's great. I am beyond thrilled with our intro episode. I can't wait for you guys to kind of see the meat and potatoes of these reviews and start getting those rolled out and see how those go.
Yep.
Brandon's worked so hard to ensure that you guys get to see the scenes that we're talking about. And by this episode, you've seen examples of this, but we haven't rolled this out at the time of recording. So I'm excited for the feedback on that because it's a really cool aspect.
Yeah, I am too. And, it's just really, these movies are fun to talk about. Art is so subjective, and, it's you can love it, you can hate it, you can just kind of like it. It doesn't really matter. But, it's, for us, I think that we just, I don't know. We like I said, as a couple, as we kind of said before, as a couple, we do this together. When we watch movies, oh, I thought this or I thought that, and just to be able to produce a show like this, this is all self-produced. Yeah, and this is all self-produced. I'm producing it. I'm doing a lot of the video editing, and Katie's doing a lot behind the scenes with social media, and so yeah, we're having a blast. Just kind of a little bit. And now for future episodes, obviously we're gonna keep these a little bit more timeless and not necessarily mention the days so much, but just kind of working through. This is still a pretty new show that we're doing. Just to kind of get you acquainted with how we're going to do things. We talked a lot about, what we want to do and what we want to see out of this ourselves, and have also taken a lot of feedback. So, obviously if you're picking this episode up, 6 months down the road, 2 years down the road, wherever you're at and finding us, you might not like every horror movie. You might just be a Nightmare on Elm Street fan, or just a Scream fan, or a Conjuring fan, or something. But, for those who are watching this with us episode by episode, we're going to keep these review episodes as kind of our main timeline of episodes, if you will. And then, we'll be putting those out every Wednesday. We're going to shoot for every Wednesday. And then on Fridays, maybe once a month, maybe even twice a month, maybe not any months, we're going to try to have a special guest interview. Now those will be different from guest hosts. We have had some people tell us, hey, I'd love to review this movie with you. Even if it's a celebrity guest or even just a local friend of ours, a family member. I know our nephew on my side, I should say, is a huge horror fan. So I know he wants to come on and talk, so, we've got we've got a couple celebrities that said, oh, I'd love to talk to you about that movie. I'm not in it, but I love that movie, so those will still be a Wednesday episode. And then we talked about, having mini episodes. So like, we'll do what I'm going to call mini episodes, and we'll probably put those out on Mondays.
Random Mondays. You
Yeah.
may not even get an interview or a mini episode every month.
Yep.
And we're still kind of working through the Patreon
Yep.
as well to know kind of what bonus content and things like that we can add.
Yep.
So that is another aspect of what will be rolling out in the future with this.
I was just gonna say the mini-episodes that we put out on Mondays, I don't expect them to be a full-length episode like our standard Wednesday episodes or the special Friday interviews. These will be kind of more like, like if Katie read a book and she wants to talk about it, if it's like a horror-related book, or if I had just gone to a con and, I had met people, or if I worked a convention or something, we'll come back and put out a special Monday episode of that and chat about it. So,
or maybe if an interview had to be a shorter interview for some reason, scheduling or something like that, if it's not going to be a full, basically hour-long episode, then we'll put it out as a mini episode.
Yeah. And obviously, you can see the timestamps on some of these. They might go over an hour. They might be a little short of an hour. I know our Halloween episode ended up being something like 53 minutes or 58 minutes or something. So, so they might not be as long. But, if you see it kind of floating around in the hour range, that's what to expect. So, before we jump into this, anything you want to talk about, share, just anything you want to say, or
well, this week was my birthday.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we're recording this on January 30th. It won't be out probably until mid to late February, but a happy belated birthday, even though we celebrated together. So
had a good night out, went out to eat.
Yep.
It was nice. I jokingly have told a coworker that once you're past 35, it's kind of like I don't care about a big celebration until later.
Yep.
But yeah, another year around the sun, and
you've joined level 38 with me. We are officially in our late 30s.
Yep. There for a few golden months, I can say that Brandon's older than me.
Yeah.
But September to January, he's older, and then now we're the same.
Yeah. Well, I had something I had to I can't contain it. I know we're not talking about Scream right now. We're talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street, but hey, it's still in the Wes Craven family of his films, if you will. Huge news just dropped again. I know we're airing this a few weeks after that we're talking, or that we're recording this, but just an hour ago, before shooting this, they announced that Scott Foley is coming back to Scream 7.
Roman.
Oh my gosh. Like, for those of you who didn't see our Zero introduction episode, we talked about our top 5 favorite horror movies of all time. Scream 3 is in the list, and I know people will hardcore. Yes, for me. I know people will hardcore disagree with me, and that's completely fine. Again, art is subjective, so we're completely okay if you don't agree with me, or I'm completely okay with it. I know she doesn't. But man, I cannot. Roman is my favorite Ghostface. I mean, to single-handedly take out who he did and just his monologue at the end, like I said,
Well, like we said in the intro episode, I like the full circle.
Yeah.
I give props to Scream 3 that it takes us back to the beginning and says, hey, here's a piece of the puzzle you didn't even know you were missing.
Yeah.
My question to you about this is, though, how in the world, and again, spoilers, by now, hopefully you've seen Scream 3, but how in the world did he survive?
I don't know, because he took a direct headshot, but, it could be a flashback. Here's the thing. It could be.
I have a theory.
Okay.
I'm wondering if he was a twin.
Maybe.
What if it's a twin situation?
Yeah. I don't know. I would almost, I don't know if I would like that or not, but, for me, I don't, honestly, I don't care. I joke. I've said this joke before about many things. When something is so epic to you in your mind, or like, say, a person or a character, I joke and I say, dude, he could be taking a dump for the whole 2 hours of the movie, and I'm just happy to see him in the movie. It's just, whether it's a flashback, whether it's, somehow he's resurrected, But the biggest thing, in my opinion, is, a lot of people, Kevin Williamson, who's directing this film, he's the original writer for Scream. He wrote Scream 2 and he wrote Scream 4. A lot of people who are into Scream, they were not a fan of this film because Kevin wasn't the writer. And so for Kevin to be the director and probably still an executive producer to allow this to allow this character to be in this film or to in some story capacity and acknowledging that he was there, that's a big deal because, these past two have all given mad props to Billy Loomis, and I'm okay with that. But, there's a...
More stew. I'm ready for the stew line of
Yeah.
things, too. I will say this about the latest two movies of Scream.
Yeah.
I didn't mind how Billy came back into the story for Sam. I'm hoping that that's not what they do with Roman.
Yeah, I agree.
I just don't want to see it recycled again. I want something new with it.
Yeah. The thing that kind of bothered me about the Scream 2022 film was that, that line that when Gail and Sydney are in the vehicle and, Gail's kind of blaming herself and she's like, you didn't do this. Billy Loomis started this. And it's like, we know,
Roman did.
Roman did. Roman influenced Billy and Stu.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. Stu deserves his flowers as well. He doesn't get enough credit. There's always been this, is he dead? Is he not dead?
Our main characters in the last Scream, when they're in the bunker, they're like, if you believe he's dead.
Exactly.
I mean,
in the theater, not the bunker.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. The
pit of the theater.
The fandom in the old theater that they've kind of made into a bunker, I guess I should say. But to me, that's like, okay, well, you can't drop that and then not do something with that.
Well, let's move on from that because
very exciting news.
Yes, it is. As much as we want to talk about Scream, we will get to our Scream episode. But today we are talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street, the original version from 1984. This was another one that I did not grow up watching. This was one that I found in later in life. I would probably say I was mid-20s, late 20s. Like I said, we're both 38 now, so it's a good 10 to 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Did a complete binge of the franchise.
Thanks.
But I'll say it right off the bat. I love this movie. One of Wes Craven's. He can't really say earlier work because he obviously did films before this, but kind of in his prime. Some of his work. So,
I would still lump this in as earlier horror.
Yeah,
I mean
it's earlier slasher genre. It's it's only about 10 years old, 10 to 15 years oldish.
Yeah. There's definitely films that came before, obviously, duh. But it is, I still feel like in the era of earlier setup, startup.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I guess I gotta go back and correct myself. I can't really say 10 to 15 years because I know there's arguments that there were slashers all the way back in the 30s. So, but the slasher craze, I should say, was really kind of started around the, either late 60s, early 70s era. So, Psycho, I know it's not necessarily a slasher, but a lot of films credit One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest for a lot of the crazy things you see in films. So anyway, diving into this, our horror genre or subgenre that we have for this film, I have it obviously as a slasher. I would even go as far as to say it's a little sci-fi because we get into like the dream realm. It's a little bit gore and torture, and we'll get into more of those kills. But I mean, I would almost say it's, and I have psychological in here as well because, a lot of these teens are getting tortured in their dreams. Obviously, it's not torture porn per se like Saw or Hostel, but I would say it's a little bit more gory than say Halloween or the original Friday the 13th. So, and, obviously it's Freddy going after teens again. So we put it in the teen box as well. So did you have any other subgenres to add to that?
Yeah, I also, I realized that we have it as ghost/paranormal, but I circled just paranormal.
Fair.
You could argue, I guess, more sci-fi, but it's a setup in this movie, at least, that in the franchise,
yeah,
he's almost like a unkillable demon
Yeah.
that can come back. So to me, there's some paranormal in there.
And obviously we'll get into that kind of in our thoughts in the film, but I am kind of on the fence about, like, what are his origins? How does this happen? And again, we'll talk more about that a little bit later. But
Right.
so this film was written, like we said, written and directed by Wes Craven. This film stars the great Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger. We have Heather Langenkamp as Nancy Thompson. Introducing Johnny Depp as Glenn Lance. It's a real bummer that his career never took off.
I know. I really wish I could have seen more from him. I think that there's just some amazing talent that they just left.
Yeah, I know. He could have been a real good pirate, or yeah.
I see him more as like a Tim Burton-esque.
Yep.
Yeah, he could have done some great things.
Probably a good musician too.
Maybe, yeah.
We'll never know.
I would have loved to have seen him in a Dior cologne, just walking in the desert.
Yep.
He could have done so much.
Yep. This film also stars Amanda Wyeth as Tina Gray, Jesu Garcia as Rod Lane, John Saxton as Lieutenant Donald Thompson, and the awesome actor that he is, Joseph Whipp, as Sergeant Parker. Now, not to go back to Scream, but we obviously see Sergeant Parker play the sheriff in the first Scream. So that's, it's a little bit of a Wes Craven crossover. So,
which we know he loves to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, small summary about this film, and then we'll get into it. Nancy Thompson must uncover the dark truth concealed by her parents after she and her friends become targets of the spirit of a serial killer, Freddy Krueger, the man with a bladed glove and burned face in their dreams, in which if they die in their dream, they die in real life.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but how many of us would be completely screwed if that was real?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that depends. One of the things that I wanted to say later was, I feel like if I were going to be attacked in my dreams, or if I knew it were their dream, I'd probably try some Matrix stuff. You know what I mean? See if I could fly. But who knows? So all right, let's dive right in. The film opens with our girl Tina having a nightmare. Tina is in a boiler room. It's a dream sequence, like we said. Tina Gray is pursued through a dark industrial boiler room by a shadowy figure with a glove fitted with razor-sharp blades. The sound of scraping metal heightens the tension. Just as Freddy Krueger is about to catch Tina, she wakes up screaming. Her nightgown is slashed, showing the physical impact of her nightmare in the real world. The next morning, Tina shares her nightmare with her friends Nancy Thompson and Glenn Lance at school. Nancy reveals that she's had a similar dream about a man with knives for fingers. Tina's boyfriend, Rod, dismisses their fears and paranoia. He's quite the jackass. He's that character that, you kind of drives you nuts. I think he's kind of funny, but at the same time, you have to, you build the death count with characters like this. You always like to see the jackasses go first, or, toward the beginning, or, or even in the end or toward the end, because, they build up their jackassery, if you will. And it's even that more satisfying when the killer gets them. So with her mother out of town, Tina invites Nancy and Glenn to spend the night. Rod shows up unexpectedly, and the group decides to have a sleepover to make Tina feel safe. It is now nightfall, and Tina falls asleep and dreams of Freddy. He chases her through the boiler room and into the yard. Freddy corners her and brutally attacks her. In the real world, which I thought this scene was so cool. In the real world, Rod wakes up to find Tina being dragged across the ceiling and slashed open. She collapses, dead, leaving Rod as the prime suspect, and he flees the scene.
In his tidy white.
Yes. I gotta say, and again, we'll talk more about it in the interesting things to note, but man, that scene was so cool. It's really
iconic.
Yeah, it's iconic, but also it's neat because obviously you see what Tina is seeing in the dream. She's being chased by Freddy. He's got the big wobbly arms, He's going back and forth. He's slicing off his fingers with his claw, with razor blades. But then, in the real world, you kind of see her struggling under the bed, under the covers.
Yeah.
And you see Freddy messing with her there too. So, like, do you think he was actually coming out of the dream world and killing her that way to do that? Like, I wondered that, because obviously, Rod is trying to find her under the covers. Like, what's going on? What's going on? He has no idea what's going on.
Right.
Um,
I wondered if he was thinking she's doing this to herself. Like there's no one else. I think at one point he says something about who's in the room, who's there. That is kind of more the logical way to think of things. Is just like, how are you doing this to yourself? How is she getting these wounds? I personally don't think he was necessarily like coming out of the dream state, like what we see later.
Yeah.
I think that it was just you get wounded, you get killed in the dream. It happens.
Yep.
To you outside of your dream.
Yep. Yeah. I agree with that. Because it's interesting how it bends between back and forth reality to dream, because in that same scene we see Nancy sleeping in her bed, and you see Freddy come through the wall, like his face. So it's like you can tell I don't know if he's trying to get to the real world, but he's definitely after them and trying to kill them. Whether that's in their dreams or in their nightmares. So,
and we can. There's a specific scene that I want to talk about later when we get there, but that is a question that I think I've had for the entire franchise. Is certain scenes where you've got a character, maybe main character, side character, they're obviously in a dream.
Yep.
And they're asleep, but things are happening around them. Is that what they're seeing in their dream or not? And I don't think that they've really answered that question. I think they want the audience to keep wondering that and being in suspense of that.
Yep. Later on, we see Nancy on the bus. She falls asleep in class and dreams of Freddy. He stalks her through the school and into the boiler room. She burns her arm on a hot pipe in the dream and wakes up screaming, finding a burn mark on her arm in reality. Nancy starts to piece together that Freddy is attacking them in their dreams, and that injuries sustained in the dreams can affect them physically in the real world. Now, this was really cool to see too, because after rewatching it again and again, and watching other horror movies, Lynn Shay, who was the older lady, she was the wise older woman in Insidious, is the teacher in this film. I thought that was so neat to see her. She wasn't necessarily she didn't have like a quote unquote starring role in it, but it was, again, really neat to see her in it.
Yeah.
So, while Rod is in jail, he dreams of Freddy in his cell. Freddy uses a sheet to hang Rod, staging it as a suicide. Nancy and her father arrive too late to save him. At this point, Nancy she understands what's going on now. Sees things are happening in real life. So at this point in the story, she's fighting to stay awake. Terrified, she avoids sleep by drinking coffee and taking caffeine pills. Her mother, Marge, notices her daughter's deteriorating state, but dismisses her concerns.
I'm so excited. It's a joke to Saved by the Bell with Jesse Spano gets hooked on the caffeine pills.
Oh, gotcha. I gotta be honest with you. I watched a lot of sitcoms. I loved Full House. I loved Boy Meets World. 2.5 Men.
Never did Saved by the Bell, really?
Saved by the Bell, I did. I kind of did by, my cousin liked it, I think, more than I did. I wasn't that big of a fan of it.
So you grew up in Michigan. I grew up in Indiana.
Yeah.
I want to say it was TBS, maybe TNT. Like every morning getting ready for school, I'd get like the Carnation instant breakfast in my milk and mix it up and kind of chug it really quick as I was getting ready for school. But I would always either have music videos from MTV, when they actually played music videos,
Yep.
dating myself even more, and Saved by the Bell. So I'm sure that I have seen every episode, probably not in order, but there is a specific, I use the word iconic too much, I know. There's a specific episode where Jesse Spano is hooked on caffeine pills.
I remember.
Yeah, and she trying to do a girl band with the girls and
Yep.
everything. And so obviously in the 80s, caffeine pills were a big
Yeah.
problem.
I took them. There was points where I was having a hard time staying awake, and they worked for me. It was either those or vitamin B12 that I would take.
Yeah.
Yep, long road trips, caffeine pills, whatever I could get my hands on.
Convention world.
Yeah. Well, I've gotten a little bit more control over my sleep nowadays, but I just at the time I was having a hard time with it, and I was also 60 pounds heavier. So
That should be in our episode somewhere. I'm getting some control over my sleep now.
Just to kind of piggyback off what you said, I was watching a lot more nerdy or dorkier things in the morning than you before school. I was either watching the episode of Power Rangers that was on in the afternoon because they would replay it in the morning.
Who didn't guess that?
Yeah. Or I was watching, this is deep cuts. I was watching on USA, they had a show called Tattooed Teenage Alien Fighters from Beverly Hills.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. If you go back and watch today, it's you'd watch probably 5 minutes of it and shut it off. You'd probably watch 2 minutes of it and shut it
I
off.
was going to say, I don't know that I'd last that long.
We get now. You say you use the word iconic too much, but this next scene was so iconic. We are at the bathtub scene.
Yeah.
Nancy is taking a bath and dozes off. Freddy's razor glove hands emerges from the water between her legs, almost pulling her under. She wakes up just in time. Now, her mom was obviously the one that woke her up, and she again falls back asleep. And Freddy pulls her underwater. I thought that was a really cool scene. I would love to know how they did that, but yeah, that was really neat.
I definitely read that scene and related to it in like that when you're just kind of feeling that you're just starting to fall asleep and then something happens.
Yep.
And you're woken up and kind of startled awake, but then I think we've all had that in our sleep one way or the other.
Yep.
And it to me, it was portrayed really well with that you knew that was what was going on with Nancy.
Yep.
She was just starting to fall asleep when that hand just slowly shows up. I think it was beautifully done.
Yep. We get to the point where Glenn and Nancy are just fed up. They just want to be done with Freddy. They're tired of him killing their friends. They're tired of him attacking them in their dreams. So
They're just plain tired.
oh yeah, they just want to go to sleep without any of this garbage.
How grouchy are we when we don't get our
Yeah.
sleep? Come on.
It's like it's like, and I don't mean to skip ahead, but it's like Freddy versus Jason, where Kelly Rowland's like, we're not safe when we're awake or asleep. I couldn't imagine that, because you can at least outrun a killer in real life and pass out somewhere for a couple hours and maybe be safe,
Yeah.
but not in this world. If I got transported to a fictional world, this is not one I would want to go to.
No.
If I had to pick a horror one, it wouldn't be that one for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Glenn suggests that Nancy try quote unquote dream skills, almost like lucid dreaming, to control her nightmares and confront Freddy. Next, we see that Nancy's mother reveals that Freddy Krueger was a child killer who was burned alive by vengeful parents and escapes justice. His spirit now haunts dreams, seeking revenge on their children.
Now I have a question for you.
Yeah, I have an issue with this.
Oh.
But go ahead.
All right, so this is my question.
Okay.
And again, it's a little bit more unclear in this very first movie than what the franchise will do later.
Yep.
But do you think that they should have just come right out and said he wasn't a child killer, that he had done other things, and that they hint at it. They sprinkle in little hints that he's attracted to children before
Sure.
killing them.
I don't know if I see it that way. I understand why they wanted to just cover it up because,
Yeah.
well, and this is where I take issue. The dream, it's weird because they don't ever really connect Freddy with being a real life child killer, serial killer, to how he's able to kill people, mainly teens, in their dreams. Those two things don't equate. And so, but the other thing too is, initially, right off the bat, they don't want to talk about him. Is this because they know he can get you in your dreams? When you start thinking about him, you'll start dreaming about him.
Right.
That I felt like fell a little short. Like that was something I feel like the the paranormal aspect of this, where he can come at you in your dreams, I felt like needed to be a little bit more ironed out.
Right.
Because like I said, he goes after children in real life. Yeah, he went after children in real life and was a child killer. Why now is he killing teens in their dreams?
And I don't think it's ironed out in this movie.
Yeah.
But in several adaptations that we've had throughout the years since 1984, they've had where like Nancy was the one that got away. Like she was in his class.
Yep.
And he didn't fulfill what he wanted to fulfill. So now he's coming back not for more children, but for the one that got away.
Potentially. Yeah, I guess I see that.
Yeah, and but it's not clear in this first
Right.
movie if that is exactly what the motivation is.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't know what his end goal is. I'm not just saying, a psychotic has to have an end goal. I've killed this many people, so I'll stop or I'll die or whatever. But like, it's odd to me, because obviously the more that he's able to attack people in their dreams or, teens or whatever, that he gains more power.
Right.
Why wouldn't you go after children in nightmares? Because they are more prone to nightmares. They have more nightmares. They do things like bedwetting and things because they're scared in their dreams. Why wouldn't you go after kids?
Well, I took from the movie that it like in so many of our horror movies, especially our teen slashers, there's a morality rule that you've crossed, you've done something wrong. Don't have sex, don't do drugs, don't go out drinking underage, partying, whatever it may be. I feel like in this particular movie and starting this whole franchise, that it's don't gossip.
Yeah.
It's a how quickly a gossip, a rumor you add power to, right? So one of the main questions I had was we opened with Tina already being able to see Freddy.
Yep.
How did Tina know about Freddy?
Right.
Because that's how he grows, is that it's you learn about who I am, you're fearful of who I am, and then I'm able to come in and attack you because you already have learned who I was.
Yeah. And I agree with you on that. You kind of get brought into the middle of the movie at that point. But here's what I will say. I really liked the fact, and they do this in the reboot too. I really liked that they shifted, because when you see Tina in her nightmare and you kind of see she's the one that's scared, you almost kind of think she's going to be the final girl.
Right.
But they shift it to Nancy. Once you start to see that, oh, Tina's not as moral and as sweet as you think, she's going to get it on with Rod.
Yeah.
We then see a shift to Nancy because, obviously Glenn is probably wanting to sleep with Nancy, but Nancy wants to hold out.
Yep.
And
She's
so
in the better girl, you know.
So, all right. So Nancy agrees with Glenn. She participates in a sleep study to understand her nightmares better. During the session, now this is when she's at the hospital, and this isn't when she's not experimenting, but during the session, she pulls Freddy's hat from the dream into reality, proving that he exists beyond the dream world. And this is where, again, I like this. I think it's neat, but it also, like, I got questions, because, what, like, do you have to feel strong enough in your dreams to be the one to pull things out? Obviously, we see later on in Freddy versus Jason, she pulls an ear out and it becomes maggots, or she's able to pull them completely out. And that's how he and Jason start fighting. So, but at the same time, it's like, because there's other instances in other dreams where people are hanging on to Freddy. No, don't kill me. They grab his shirt or something, and they either wake up or they don't wake up. They wake up dead, which I know you don't wake up dead, but obviously, actually, Freddy versus Jason again. Mark, he wakes up, dead basically and dies. Like he wakes up and dies. This is what happens. But anyway,
to me, it led the question: does Freddy want to be pulled out of the dream?
Right. Is that his ultimate goal? Does he want to be back to life?
Right. And in this particular, having this movie as a standalone, the question kind of is: was he like damned to be only in the dream state? Right. And he wants you to pull. Like the first time I'm watching through this and she's pulling the hat out, I'm going, doing exactly what he wants you to do. Like, how much more powerful could you be if you're able then to get out of the dream state and go about your rampage?
Yep. So then we get to Nancy and Glenn, or they're planning to try to pull him out, trying to, get him or whatnot. Despite Nancy's warnings, she's telling Glenn, like, whatever you do, don't fall asleep. You got to stay awake. Despite Nancy's warnings, Glenn falls asleep watching TV in bed. Freddy then kills him in the gruesome scene where he's dragged into the mattress, and a geyser of blood erupts, drenching the ceiling. Okay, I thought this was awesome,
But over the top.
and dumb at the same time. Like, not dumb, but like, I was just like, because it's, again, I hate to overuse the word, but it's pretty iconic for that film. Like when you see a clip show of Nightmare on Elm Street, I feel like that's usually in the clips. It's like,
And when people talk about the unknown Johnny Depp in the first movie that he did,
yeah,
that's what they talk about.
right.
Yeah.
But, for me, I'm looking at this and I'm like, did he die? Did he take him somewhere? That's a lot of blood for a human.
Okay.
Yeah, but it also, like, okay, you pulled him in the bed, but what happened to him when he was in the bed?
Yeah.
Because, Freddy pulls Nancy down the water. I mean, they easily could have made like a huge pool of blood appear in the bathtub. What made Glenn explode like that?
Right.
And especially that, to me, I feel like I just had to kind of suspend belief and just say, all right, he's dead. It's a cool scene. This was.
Do you like to tell me cause plot?
Yeah.
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 But I thought the same thing. I thought that's way more blood than the human body usually contains, but okay. And then I had the same thought. I was like, what did he do to him in the mattress?
Yep.
Yeah. How did that, I mean, and it is kind of a different death scene than what we've seen.
Yep.
Other scenes so far in the movie, you've got wounds happening.
Yep.
You've got kind of a cat and mouse ish.
Yep.
Stalking ish a little bit. I want you to build fear for me.
Yep.
But he went for it with Glenn.
He did. Yeah. I mean, I'd say you could almost say he shredded him to pieces, but there wasn't even any pieces there. He liquefied the guy.
Yeah, he liquefied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we then move on to Nancy. Nancy's in the window. Her dad and her parents, whoever, have barred the windows, and she's crying out to her dad, like, "Hey, Dad, like, I can't, he's dead, and obviously Glenn's parents are blaming Nancy for it. They think she's the killer at this point, which I don't know how Nancy could have pulled him in the bed like that, but
I mean, she's pretty strong to pull a hat out of a dream, but I don't know if she's that strong.
right. All right. So Nancy has a plan. She's determined to face Freddy. Nancy rigs her house with bloody traps. She plans to pull Freddy through into the real world and defeat him once and for all. One thing I loved when she falls asleep there for that split second is when she gets on the phone and the tongue pops out. I love that. I know they sell props out there with that tongue, and so funny.
Yeah.
Nancy tries to call her father, who's across the street investigating Glenn's death, to come help her. Nancy falls asleep and is able to grab Freddy, pulling him into the real world. She leads him through her trap-filled house, much like Home Alone, injuring him, but she fails to kill him. Freddy then attacks her mother, Marge, dragging her into a fiery void. Nancy is devastated, but resolves to fight back. I know we talk about the best death in these. We have a best death section. This is
a worse death?
Probably one of the worst deaths I've ever seen. I just don't get it. Like, it's so weird. It was very Poltergeist, and I know Poltergeist is still kind of like in a TV. It's a little bit heavier on the supernatural side than Nightmare, even though Nightmare is still quite a supernatural film. With a guy being able to attack somebody in their dreams. But it's also very odd. This is a very odd death. Like, this is one of the weirdest, worst deaths in horror history, in my opinion.
And
like,
he just pulls her through the window, right?
No, this is the bed part where the mom's in the bed, and it's like a blue light lights up on the mattress, and it's like making weird
yeah.
sound. I don't know if I can play that, but like sounds, and it's like and like pulls her down the bed.
Yeah.
That was such a weird, like, and again, I'm like, okay, we didn't get the bloodbath like we did with Glenn. Is she dead?
Yeah.
Is she in his, like, does he have some kind of chamber in that boiler room where he keeps victims? Like, I didn't understand that. Now, even today, after watching it several times, I'm like, I just have to suspend disbelief, and I guess her mom's dead, so cool.
Right.
Yeah, so, all right. Nancy realizes that Freddy feeds on fear. She turns her back on him, refusing to give him power. Freddy lunges at her, but he disappears as her lack of fear weakens him. Is this a happy ending? Well, Nancy steps outside to find that obviously that was all happening at night. She steps outside into the daylight to find her friends alive and everything seems normal. But as they drive off, Freddy's clawed hand pulls them back into danger. And the film ends very ambiguously. It's a very weird ending as well. Obviously, I know a lot of these, classic horror films, they kind of have that final jump scare or whatever. I know that they were in that convertible and like the top goes over and such.
It's obviously Freddy's colors of his sweater.
Now, this is what you're talking about. The very end
Yeah.
cliffhanger scene. Nancy's mother, who also appears to be alive, is pulled through the front door by Freddy, suggesting that he is still a threat. The film ends on a chilling note, leaving the audience questioning the boundary between dreams and reality, which I agree.
Yeah.
This is one of those things where I'm just like,
Did she really defeat him?
yeah, right. I mean, obviously not, because we have 8 movies? No, 8. Well, 8
Right.
movies total in this whole
Right.
thing. So,
And spoiler alert, Nancy shows back up.
yeah.
So this wasn't the end of Nancy either.
Yep. So, this movie blends psychological horror with supernatural elements, creating a unique villain in Freddy Krueger. Wes Craven's innovative concept and Robert Englund's unforgettable portrayal of Freddy makes this a true classic in the genre. Despite all of its problems, it's such, it's good. So, the pacing of this film, I felt like was quite steady, but it kind of leaned on the slow side. There were parts where I felt like it drug on a little bit. But still, it didn't bother me. They were obviously character building, story building.
One thing that I noted, and it was kind of a theme between all the whole movie, was yes, Nancy is our main female, our final girl.
Yep.
I didn't like Nancy.
Really?
I thought Nancy was mean to a lot of people. I wrote down that Nancy is very bitchy to both Glenn and to her mom. And I said there's multiple scenes here where I feel like Nancy's the mom and the mother is like the daughter following what Nancy has to say. So I thought it was kind of interesting that she was the good girl.
Yep.
That, she doesn't, for like in Grease, she doesn't rat her hair. She's the Sandy B or whatever the song is. But she's just so mean.
Maybe, but I will also throw 2 things at you.
Yeah.
Is she mean, or is she more kind of like Lori, where she's kind of ho-hum and quiet? But also, you're kind of mean too when you don't get a lot of sleep.
Well, we did talk about that. Yeah, anyone would be. Yeah. Yeah, I can understand that. She just did seem, I guess you could say, girl, you need a nap.
Yeah. So, I mean, because I know that both Nancy, she seems like she's nicer, and she becomes more of a strong female, like, lead, like, very empowered woman, which I love. I think she's awesome. Like,
I loved the character.
Yeah.
I just thought there were certain times I was like,
yeah, in future Nightmare films, especially the third one, I felt like she really shines as a strong, empowered woman in this franchise.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to move on to the interesting things of note. A Nightmare on Elm Street is Johnny Depp's first film, as we've discussed. During casting, it came down to Johnny Depp, who was 21 years old, or another young actor to play Glenn. Director Wes Craven asked his teenage daughter which actor he should cast as the heartthrob boyfriend. She chose Depp.
Of course she did.
Oh, yeah.
Of course she did.
I get that.
And if she didn't, shame on her.
Right. A Nightmare on Elm Street was inspired by real-life events. Craven decided to make A Nightmare on Elm Street after reading a series of Los Angeles Times articles about a group of teenage immigrants who, after moving to the U.S. from refugee camps, died in their sleep after suffering from disturbing nightmares. You know, it's interesting how a lot of these early slashers had influence from real events. You know, we'll get more into that with things like Scream and such again, you know, and I guess this is kind of a relatable thing because both Scream and A Nightmare on Elm Street, I guess, loosely, not word for word, but loosely spawned from something real. And we talked about with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that came from the idea for the story, you know, not true to event by event, but you know, it was inspired by, if you will.
Yeah. And there is 100%. I don't want to quote any data because I don't have it, but I do know 100% that as humans, you can die from lack of sleep alone.
Yep.
So, you know, not that there's a slasher in your dreams, that's the creative part of it, but
this is a funny callback.
Biologically.
This is a funny callback. I still remember the episode. Do you remember the Nickelodeon series Pete and Pete?
Oh, yeah.
There was that episode where young Pete was trying to stay awake for, I think he makes it 11 days. And I remember the end of that movie when he's falling over. It's like a trust fall type of fall. His mom comes up behind him and catches him. She's like, "You're going to beat this." I don't know what made me think of that, but like, it's just, I remember that it was something you said kind of made me come back to that, but I thought it was funny. All right. So Freddy Krueger is an amalgamation of Wes Craven's childhood terrors. Freddy was the name of a bully who beat Craven up in elementary school, and his signature hat was based on a person someone wore a hat in his neighborhood, a neighborhood trunk, who scared Craven when he was young. Now, I forgot to mention at the beginning, with our interesting things to note, these are things that we've researched online, that, you know, we found that we thought were interesting. We hope there's truth to them, but this is just, you know, what's out there. So just want to kind of throw that out there before I continue. Freddy Krueger's sweater is scientifically scary. Craven designed Freddy's striped sweater after reading in Scientific American that the human eye has a difficulty recognizing those particular shades of red and green side by side. Therefore, looking at this, it is subliminally unsettling.
It does kind of remind me when you go to the eye doctor and they have to test to see if you're colorblind.
Yep.
Red and green is usually one of the tests that you have to do with the little blots and what's the number inside of it.
Sure. Freddy Krueger's weapon of choice was inspired by house pets and infomercials. Craven didn't want Freddy to wield a simple knife like Michael Myers in Halloween or Jason Voorhees in Friday the 13th. So he drew on his fear of his own cat's claws and a series of late-night commercials selling sets of knives to create Freddy's iconic knife glove.
100% makes sense.
Oh, yeah. I mean, looking at this one here, you can tell, if you're watching on YouTube, you can tell that, you know, it does kind of look like something that was fashioned together, but also effective. You know, I guess I'll kind of go into this now. I've met Robert a couple times. I've seen him do this quite a bit, and I'll kind of do a close-up on the camera. I had him write the 1-2, Freddy's coming for you, and then a signature. I love this. This is actually one of my favorite autograph pieces. I will cherish this until the day I die. I will never sell it. This is just, I love this so much. And you know, I met Freddy years ago, Robert Englund years ago. Robert, the first time I met Robert, it was really funny. It was at Horror Hound when it was still at the old hotel on 21st in Indianapolis. He had to go, he was leaving, and he's like, "I'm going to do my last photo and autograph for free, and I am going to pick you." And he points at me, and I was like, "Oh, that's awesome."
Yeah.
So I got to have the last photo with him. The other point in which I met Robert Englund, it was we're recording this early 2025. This would have been fall of 24. Now by this point, Robert is a massive star. I mean, when he has to have his photo ops and everything, he has to have his autograph. Like, you get tickets in line. I mean, he's just so popular.
Oh yeah.
It's sad, but he can't see everybody at these shows.
Oh, yeah.
So when I was in line for my photo op, I was wearing a PRS guitar shirt. You know, I'm a big PRS guy. We were going through the line of photo ops, and he stopped me and was like, "Oh, PRS guitars." Starts telling me the story about like, "Oh, I have this Gibson guitar that I love so much," and was telling me the story about how he'd go to Vegas and hang out with Wayne Newton and would just watch him play and perform, and they'd hang out.
Can you imagine if you were a bystander, like you were going to go see Wayne Newton, and you're just like,
Right. Well,
Englund.
I mean, I can't say how cool that was of Robert. I mean, knowing that he just had a bunch of people in line, knowing that he had more to come in for this photo op. I mean, there were lines. This line was like wrapped around the room, and it was just an honor to be able to for him to stop, and just tell me that story. I mean, I both times I've met that man, he's been just a phenomenal human being.
I think so many of the quote unquote villains that you've met, but
Oh,
I've
yeah.
also been with you for a couple of them. Some of the scariest characters
Yeah.
are the nicest human beings
Yeah.
that you're going to meet in real life. Just sweethearts.
Yeah. Well, in horror, the horror community in general, I feel like for the most part now, there are a couple bad apples and everywhere you go,
Yeah.
but it's significantly less than other fandoms that I've been a part of. Everybody's just so sweet and nice. And, it's like, I asked somebody, I was like, I wonder, why do you think it is? Why do you think people in horror are so nice? And it's like, you know what? I think it's because we're literally all in this together. The statistic of 10 out of every 10 people are going to die.
Yep.
So it's like, and it's not like, we're celebrating death or we're worshiping evil or something. I don't see it that way, but we all have a common interest. There's these fun-loving characters.
Trauma bonding is a real thing.
It is, but also, horror movies, especially slashers, they have this way of making you love the killer.
Yeah.
And root for the killer.
Yeah.
The killer and the final girl. Who cares about everybody else? But like, you want to see them keep coming back or whatever. In most cases, I feel like.
Yeah. Like with this movie with Nightmare, like you're bummed to see Glenn, Johnny Depp's character, die.
Yeah.
You like the guy.
Yep.
But then you're also like, oh, look
Yep.
at what's happened to that guy.
Yep. Continuing on with the interesting things of note. A Nightmare on Elm Street was shot in just 32 days.
That's insane.
Principal photography began in June of '84 and wrapped in July. I guess it is kind of crazy, but at the same time, like, I feel like there were a lot more special effects in this one than, say, Halloween or, Texas Chainsaw. A lot less, having to shoot, but, because they had to do a lot of the special dream sequences and whatnot. But there were a lot of other practical effects, like those big arms that Freddy had when he was chasing Tina through a dream or, cutting off the fingers. I'm sure they had a way of doing that practically as opposed to like anything digital. Plus it being the 80s, there's probably not much they could do digitally. So you're right. That isn't pretty impressive and crazy that they were able to just shoot it in 32 days.
Yeah.
The boiler room in A Nightmare on Elm Street was an actual boiler room. In the basement of a jail, the scenes where Freddy attacks his victims in the boiler room were shot in an actual boiler room in the basement of Lincoln Heights Jail in Los Angeles. Soon after the shooting ended, soon after shooting ended for the film, the building was condemned because of asbestos.
That's always lovely to know after.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they probably for future films they had to rebuild it. And kind of a bummer, but
that also kind of lends to helping with the short time frame.
Yep.
If they're not necessarily building an entire set from scratch and they're able to, scout out these sites beforehand and basically use what they've got, it could save them some time.
Yep. It took A Nightmare on Elm Street's makeup artist 3 hours each day to apply and take off Robert Englund's Freddy Krueger makeup. The makeup consists of 11 separate pieces applied to Englund's face and upper chest. I'm going to say that's actually, it is, but it's also pretty impressive because I know it takes at least 4 hours to put, 4 hours? No, I'm sorry. Let me take that back. It might have taken like 4 hours or so for Victoria in Terrifier. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but I know it takes 2 hours just to put Art's face on.
Yeah. Well, and I think we've talked about this in other episodes. If we haven't, it's an ongoing theme for me. I love learning about the background of how the effects happen, especially effects that are handmade and not CGI.
Yep.
To think of 11 different pieces on your face.
Yep.
The seams that you would have and the blending that you'd have to have and the ability to make facial expressions for the actor, for Robert Englund to be able to do under 11 different pieces.
Yep.
That part is what gets me. I mean, luckily he doesn't have, necessarily full, in every scene, but just the face and the top of the neck alone,
Yeah.
that's a lot. That is a lot. I could, being someone who gets claustrophobic very easily, I couldn't imagine trying to have the application process, but then also all the hours of wearing it, making sure that it's consistent through each scene. It's a lot of work.
It's a good thing they never did like a Surf's Up Freddy where he was wearing shorts and a tank top and you had to see the rest of his burns.
Yeah, he was only burned, from here. You'd still die.
Yep. Robert Englund based his performance as Freddy Krueger on a horror icon and a musical theater star. Englund was inspired by Klaus Kinski's performance in the 1979 remake of Nosferatu and the work of James Cagney. Cagney, that's funny. That takes me back to the old, the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
You dirty rat, you killed my brother. You see Raphael walk. I hate Cagney. British actor David Warner was originally supposed to play Freddy Krueger. He was forced to drop out due to scheduling conflicts. Just reading this, I don't even know. I'm not familiar with who that is. But I will say that I am very happy that we got Robert. I mean, I couldn't imagine
anyone else.
And I love Jackie. I love Jackie in Watchmen.
He does injustice.
I don't
It's
know.
not the same.
He does some justice.
Well,
I would say that Jackie's personality does justice. The way he speaks. I get I get why they cast Jackie.
Yeah.
I think that they imagined something different than what they got. And I think that's why it fell short, because it's a rough film, the remake.
We'll have to review that one at some point.
Yeah.
But I would counter that with the physical. He did a great mimic of Robert Englund's performance.
He was creepy. Yeah.
And certain mannerisms and certain things, he was very believable as Freddy still, in my opinion.
Yep. One of Nightmare on Elm Street's most famous scenes was inspired by Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. The famous scene in which a geyser of blood shoots out of Glenn's bed was inspired by the blood pouring from the elevator, that scene in The Shining. To create this effect, the blood was created from the blood was created from 80 gallons of water mixed with red paint, which was then poured through a set built upside down.
I was going to say that I saw a kind of behind the scenes of how they made that, and it was upside down, so that forceful flushing of blood that we get was gravity, which is ingenious.
Yep. Kind of going along with that, the iconic Tina death scene was filmed using a rotating set, where the room was built on a turntable, allowing the camera to remain stationary while the room spun around, creating the disorienting effect of Tina seemingly sliding across the ceiling as she was dragged by Freddy Krueger.
NSYNC did not do it first.
This technique made it appear as if the perspective was changing drastically while she herself crawled on the floor. I thought that was awesome how they did that. And I'm sure it was a trip for the actors.
And again, in a month.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Nancy was almost killed by breakfast foods in A Nightmare on Elm Street. The sticky substance that keeps her from running up the stairs when she's running away from Freddy was in fact a mixture of oatmeal and a pancake batter. Yeah. Well, before we get into it, kind of getting into our rating and everything, Katie and I, now, I know we showed a picture in our Halloween episode of us, of me in front of the Halloween house. Katie was there. I don't want anybody to think I went without her. She was there. She took the picture. We just kind of forgot to get one together. So I know I noted that in the episode, but I just wanted to reassure that you were there.
When we travel, but more specifically when Brandon travels, he does cram a lot of activities and events and as much as he can before he's on to the next thing. So I think it was just if I remember correctly, that day we got to see American Horror Story season 1 house, Fast and Furious house, we were just plugging things into a GPS with a couple that are friends of ours, and I think it was just one of those we all just overthought it or didn't think of it. But yes, I was there. I did get to see that the house as well.
Well, so 2 other locations, and I do believe we got photos together. I'll have to go back and look, but
Yeah, I was there.
we saw Nancy's house, the famous Nightmare on Elm Street house, and Glenn's house. That
They're actually across the street from each other.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I think I saw.
Catty corner or kitty corner,
Yep.
depending on where you're from.
Yeah, I'm kitty corner. She's catty corner.
Catty corner.
I saw an article to where recently, it was like literally this couple months ago. Whoever lives in that house now, I think they're sick of people coming to visit it.
Sure.
But we were pretty respectful when we went.
Well, yeah. Well, when we were outside of the Fast and the Furious house, they had a sign, or I think it was that they had like a sign, and they had some ropes out and everything. I mean, LA in general is hard to find parking and hard to get about. There's a lot of people in a very small amount of space. I get frustrated if it was a constant, like, I'm just driving home from work. I just want to get home, and here's a group of people on my front yard taking photos. I get it. I get it. But I will say there wasn't, litter left all over. There wasn't anything like that. And for the most part, when we were out there, we didn't really bump into any other people at the exact same time.
No.
But yeah,
You got to imagine too, the people living there, and if they come home, like you just said, to like fans, and they see them, I'm sure fans are like, "Can we come inside?" No.
Well, I'm sitting here thinking, like, with us, like, if I lived in a filming location house, it'd be like, I have to keep up on this yard work way more.
Yeah, I not to get too much further down that rabbit hole, but I visited the Buffy house, the house from Buffy,
Yeah.
which I'll drop a picture in here too. Lawn care was not there. I mean, I don't want to speak ill of anybody, but I got to see the school, that classic 90s school that's in like every 90s movie and show, 90210 Buffy, not another teen movie. We just watched the other night. But I went to the Buffy house, which is like within walking distance, and it was so bad. I mean, I hate to say it, but and maybe they did that because they were getting too many people. I'm not sure.
Like,
but
get a picture in the weeds.
Right.
Well, and in my background with legal, I'm sitting here going, if somebody trips and falls and hurts themselves or something like that, you got to have insurance and be liable. So I can understand how it may turn a customer away from buying a house if it was a shooting location.
Yeah. All right. So now we're on to the death count. Katie, how many people do you think died in this movie?
Lord, I don't know now. Well, we had Tina, Rod, Glenn,
and Mark.
Mom.
That's it.
Well, are we counting that Mom?
Yeah. So according to the official death count that I found, it was Tina, Rod, Glenn, and Marge. But there's also 20 more deaths if you include the 19 children that Freddy killed, and then Freddy's death himself, which he doesn't really. I mean, his real life death.
Yeah.
But for the film that we see on screen, 4.
Yeah.
So,
it just seems like more.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, what, Katie? What was your favorite scene from this film?
So I actually have a favorite scene here that I didn't. And if you did say it, I'm sorry. I didn't see or hear in your plot summary, but it is in a dream sequence when Tina is in the body bag, and is being pulled down the school. It's when Nancy falls asleep in class.
Okay,
and I think it's before she gets burned and screams and wakes up. But what kind of like teases her to leave the classroom is you're not. As an audience member, you're not 100% that she's dreaming right now.
Right.
She sees Tina standing in a body bag.
Yep.
And then she's like, what's going on? And she follows Tina, and Tina's being pulled through the body bag, and this streak of blood is going. And to me, it's simplistic, but it's creepy as hell, right? And it's, to me, it's kind of beautifully done where, if that was me dreaming, I would be going, where's my friend going? And wanting to follow. And
right.
So that's what I put. What about you? What's your favorite scene?
I got to go with the iconic bathtub scene. Yeah. I love it so much.
I went back and forth between the two.
No.
Yeah.
I love it so much. What did you think the best death was?
So I wrote down Glenn and the mattress and the shooting upside down and everything. But when you were going back through the plot summary, I was just thinking, you know what? I have to give a tie there with Tina.
Yep. Tina is actually my favorite. That's the best
Yeah.
death to me. Just even the effect that they do with her getting scratched in the
Yeah.
stomach, and it's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
this is how it's going. And this is kind of why I put a labeled as gore and torture, because the that was for
But it's pretty early on in
Yeah.
the movie.
Yep.
To me, it's a good setup to show that this isn't exactly like the slashers you've seen before.
Yep.
It's not exactly your Friday the 13th, where it's a person that's standing there doing it. You don't see the killer.
Yep.
But she is actively getting attacked.
Yep.
And it just adds another layer of what you're in for.
Yep. All right, so now we are on to our rating system, the Slays rating system. If you've never seen the show before or listened to it on a podcast, a lot of people, when they're talking about a movie and they're rating a movie, they'll say, "Hey, what kind of a letter grade do you give it?" Or, what do you give it for, like, a number? Or, how many stars do you give this movie? Well, we like to do all three. We want to kind of include everybody in kind of their thinking of it, if they do all three like us, or if they just do one of the three, that's fine either way. I'm gonna start out. I'm gonna give this one an A minus.
Okay.
Yes, it has flaws. No, it's not perfect. There are things that are questionable, but they weren't deal breakers for me. I still love watching through this. I don't not have a good time every time I watch this. It is a classic. It is, we're doing this kind of little set of 5 of the classics, to start the show off. And I couldn't have done it without A Nightmare on Elm Street. It's definitely foundational for, I feel like, our generation and, a couple of the generations before and generations after. This is a good starting point for horror. It's like, hey, if somebody asks you, hey, what's like the first 5 horror movies I should try if I've never seen one before, it's definitely this one. So I gave it an A minus. What did you give it?
I gave it a B plus.
B plus?
So right, similar, close neighborhood.
Yeah.
I have to give it props that it's a great start and setup of what future movies are able to build on.
Yep.
There are some things that we've talked about that you can kind of nitpick at. Some like logic plot points where you just have to be like, okay, I'm just going to follow along, and if they want to bend their own rules, okay, fine.
Yep.
But it is a solid movie. And again, like you said, it's one of the top movies of slasher genre that everyone knows. You can take one look at the glove and know who we're talking about. The sweater, who we're talking about. The hat, possibly, especially the more burned detail on the hat.
Yeah.
He's a known character.
Yeah. I will say this, just kind of in the middle here, they sell this mask, Trick or Treat Studio sells this mask and the hat separate. There's no way I could have it without both. I'm pretty sure they sell it separately. Yeah, you're right. The hat and the mat, like the burned face, they have to both be there. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
What do you give this as far as like ranking 1 through 10?
I gave it an 8.
Okay.
It's just again, I love this movie. Rewatch, it's great. It's a great build up, a great start. But if you're taking this as just standalone,
yep.
If you were going into this blind and you hadn't seen the second one, the third one, the remake, and you have some of the fill-in plot points, logic, backstory that you don't know,
yep.
Watching this, there were some things that I would go, but why?
Sure.
Why did he do this? Like, one of the main things that you talked about earlier too was why, as a living human, Freddy went after children, but then now in this state that he's in, he's going after teenagers. Well, my thought process too was, why isn't he going after revenge of the parents that killed him?
Yep.
Instead, he's going after the one that got away, or he's possibly going after brand new teenagers.
Yep. And you see in later films, he goes after everybody. He goes after adults. He goes after kids. He goes after.
But if you're taking it just as this, and you're not getting into the whole franchise,
Sure.
that's when I had to give it an 8.
Yep.
Just a few little things where, again, this was the only thing that I had seen. I'd want to know the things. Yeah, I had questions. Thank you.
Yep.
What about you?
I gave it a 9. I feel like 9's a fair goal. I mean, again, if I'll repeat myself. It's one of those where I feel like I would have to tell somebody, hey, watch this. It's foundational for liking horror. It's foundational for a lot of things. But also, it's one that, I liked it. Freddy is very quirky. I think he's funny. It's entertaining and scary at the same time. And it's one of those just films that's multi-generational. And you can just watch it forever, basically. I give it 4.5 stars. I think that's a fair star rating, not quite 5 stars, but again, it's up there.
I gave it 4.
Okay.
I gave it 4. I liked that there were some things that were more subtle. That in other slashers that we've seen, there's been maybe some gratuitous nudity and things like that, where you're just kind of like, okay, why does she have to be naked? Why does this and that? I liked that wasn't a focal point here.
Yeah.
It was hinted at that, he probably had a fetish for children, but it was not an overly sexualized.
Yep.
Why do we have to do this? So to me, I gave it props for that.
Yeah.
That it didn't rely on nudity. It didn't rely on sexuality. Now, it's campy.
Yep.
And some may say a little dated. I think that younger generations than us may kind of look at it and go, that's really dated.
Yeah.
We grew up with it. But I think that 4 stars is fair.
Yeah. Well, and I'll piggyback off one of your comments there, just kind of about the kid thing. I don't really know if he was sexually attracted to children.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if he was sexually if seeing them die was, because a lot of killers will get off on murdering people, and maybe for him, his kink was killing kids, and that's what kind of made him aroused. So not the necessary, and again, I it's disgusting to even talk about, but
right.
I don't think that he, at least in my thinking and watching of it, my observation, I don't think he was sexually attracted to children. I think he was, but I could be wrong, at least at this point.
I think that in future remakes, they kind of hint at it a little bit more than what we got here. So again, taking this as a standalone, it's one of those, like, it leads to the question of why, right? Why is he killing the kids? And then you also ask, how is he stuck in a dream state?
Yep.
And it's just a question that I don't think gets fully answered in this movie by itself.
Sure.
And in some ways, it's still not answered throughout the franchise.
Yeah. And there are darker movies. There are movies that have things like this in it. I think that as many people that get killed in this franchise, and as creative as everybody gets killed, I think they probably want to stay away from that a little bit. Because this is still a fantasy type of movie. And I don't think that they wanted to go that far with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
I agree 100%. And sometimes I realize that I may be critical in the how and the why while watching, and just being like, just because plot. But I still would love to just know, thinking of like Chucky, he says the incantation and he puts his soul into the doll.
Yep.
There's a how, right? This is how he was able to do that. We don't ever see that transition of he was burned alive and then now he's in a dream state.
Yep.
Did he sell his soul? Did he make a deal? We don't ever get that clarity.
Yep. It would be interesting to see a young Freddy story if they could do it right. I know the Leatherface film wasn't very successful at all, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning, they did pretty well with Leatherface and his family and everything. So, but obviously we'll get into those later.
Yeah.
Okay, so we also have another rating system that we go by, not just by the three that we mentioned before. But we also have like to talk about the replay value. And what we mean by that is, it might be a great story, or I'm sorry, it might not be the best story, but you enjoyed it. It's one that you can put on, when you're taking a nap, or when you're, trying to get work done, or it's something in the background. The examples I always go to, and you'll probably hear me say this quite a few times. The movie Birdman with Michael Keaton, it won Best Picture the year the year following that it was released. I don't ever. I think it was a masterpiece, but I don't ever really want to see it again. But you've got kind of the lower story quality movies like, say, Batman and Robin, or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, or something along those lines that weren't box office smashes. They weren't. Hey, they weren't amazing, but it's something that,
3 and 3.
again, you could put on while you're getting work done. It's or you're cleaning the house, or you're taking a nap, or things, again, like I just said that. But so we have kind of a system of replay value of kind of like a best to least. Will watch repeatedly is the best, followed by likely. I'm neutral on it. I don't know if I'll watch it again. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I'm unlikely to watch it again, or I'm never watching this again. It was just that bad. So Katie, where do you put this on the replay value rating?
Well, I started to put it down as likely.
Yep.
But I do have to admit that I have watched it repeatedly.
Yep.
So I did finally grade it with a final will watch repeatedly.
Yep.
Uh, these scenes are iconic, legendary, great kills and everything. There's just certain times where you're like, oh yeah, I could watch Freddy do that again.
Yep.
So what did you rate it as?
I also said will watch repeatedly. Now here's what I will say though. The original Nightmare on Elm Street is not my go-to for these. We say it a lot. My favorite horror movies of all time is Freddy versus Jason. But if I'm gonna watch a Nightmare on Elm Street film, it is either this one, but I usually will throw the third one on because I love the third one. But this also is strong enough to say yes. This is we'll watch this repeatedly, absolutely. And of course, if you're doing a franchise watch, you've got to watch this one. So. Well, hey, that about wraps it up for A Nightmare on Elm Street 1984. Again, thank you guys so much for being with us. We love having you here. We love being able to talk to you guys about this and just having a platform to do this on.
We love hearing from you guys and your opinions.
Yeah, what did you guys think? With every episode, we're gonna have a downloadable companion. You can rate the movies just like we do. It's got a section for notes. It's got a section for all the rating systems like that we have here on the screen. All of it's there. So be sure to follow us on social media. We're on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. We have a Facebook group that you can discuss things. I know, Katie, you post in that group a lot. Yeah. We have Threads. We are on X, and we are on Bluesky. Now, the big difference in all of our handles is they're all The Couple That Slays, but our X is simply Couple That Slays because they're limited on characters. And we are considering a TikTok at some point. I think we want to see if it sticks around or not. But we're definitely going to be posting more reels and such. So TikTok may come. We're just going to wait to see the outcome online because we don't want to start one and then have it go away.
Yeah, I personally am on TikTok.
Yeah,
and I have shared some of our links and like our theme song and such just on my personal page for right now. But let us know if that is a platform that you would like to see. Maybe some cutouts from these episodes and such. More than happy to start that up as well.
Yeah. So. And if you're not a fan of watching us, which we completely understand, we'd love it if you'd like and subscribe our YouTube channel. But we understand that some people are doing this while they're taking a run, or they listen to things on podcasts when they're running. They're walking around. Yeah, they don't necessarily want to see our ugly mugs.
I was gonna say I've got a wonderful face for radio.
We are also on all podcast networks, and you could just find us under The Couple That Slays Together. You can see our logo there. I know we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Amazon Music. We've
And we also have a direct Gmail.
Yep.
The couple that slays
at gmail.com.
at Gmail. Feel free to email in directly questions. Maybe there's an answer to a question that we had as well that we could do some follow-up for future episodes. So we want to hear from you. We want to know what kind of genres and things like that we have our likes and dislikes. Maybe there's something we didn't even think about reviewing that you're really interested in.
Yep.
Let us know.
And, like Katie said earlier, we are still kind of working on the Patreon, and we don't want to come off as like about the money. Any money that we'll make on this, if ever, we're not in it for the money. We're going right back into the podcast, whether it's upgrading mics, upgrading cameras, being able to get bigger name guests if we want to have interviews. We're still very fresh in this. We're still, kind of working out the kinks. We're still very young in this. Again, if you're watching this 2 years from now or 5 years from now, obviously if we're still around, that, but it's a little bit of a different story. But in our current time of recording this, we just want to, we just want you to know that we're so happy for you guys to be there for us, watching us. We've had a lot of positivity just in this, and so.
But we do want some feedback.
Yeah, we love feedback. If you want to go to the Patreon, great. If not, that's fine. Continue to watch, continue to listen. It's not a requirement to life, but if you'd like to support the show, then awesome.
Subscribe, share, all those things are free, and definitely help us get our name out there.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we want to help build this community.
Yep.
And this isn't just our review. We want to hear from you too.
Yep. And at the end of the day, we just want to say too, all are welcome. No one is discriminated against. Freddy, Jason, Michael, they don't discriminate in their kills. We're not going to discriminate in our audience. So anyone and everyone, you're all welcome here. So we just want to talk about horror and really just kind of express our love. All we ask for is just your respect. Please be respectful to each other in the comments. Please be respectful to us.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, people might like it. They might like something that you like, and they might hate something that. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. They might
like the same things. You might like something that someone else dislikes.
Yep. So not everybody's going to agree, but we all have to realize that art is subjective, and that we can just move forward and say, hey, it's good for you, it's not for me, or hey, I love it, but you might not, and that's okay. So, I think that about wraps it up again for this episode. I'm Brandon.
I'm Katie, and we're the couple that slays together. Until next time, enjoy the horror, and sweet dreams.
The couple that slays together.